The next F1 game from EA and Codemasters has been revealed today. F1 25 will be coming out once again at the end of May with 3 days early access for the iconic edition featuring Lewis Hamilton on the cover. The headlines from this reveal, no surprise, My Team Career Mode is getting a revamp finally after 5 years. We're also getting a third installation of the story mode Breaking Point, where finally we'll be fighting for a championship with Connor Sports. There's also going to be some sort of in-game content tie-in with the F1 movie. And finally, at this stage, what seems pretty big news is that this game will only be on PC, PlayStation 5, and Xbox Series X and S. The old gen is no more. In this video, firstly, I'll be showing you my live reaction to the trailer and then breaking it down because there are a few moments where we need to pause and dissect what we're seeing on our screens. And then secondly, as I always love to do on this channel, deep diving into the press release. So be sure to lock in and watch all the way to the end to get all the details of what we know so far from F1 25. Number 7 was a 7-time world champion. Yeah, this is definitely going to be Lewis heavy. Yep.
It's always been aggressive.
Lewis Hamilton front and center.
It's gone from being all out, all risk. Now it's a marathon, not a sprint.
I mean, as per usual, these real trailers are always slick. They're always going to be, but all these shots look really nice and shiny. But the question is how much of it is actually from in-engine. And even if it is in-engine, every time I feel like that when they do the reveal trailers, they kind of soup up the graphics to like ultra maximum that we never can use ourselves when we play the game. So that's going to be the question of, can we actually start to get anywhere near to this sort of graphic fidelity in the actual game? If there's copyrighted music, there'll be a bit of a mute here because they like to use real music. Not really missing that much, to be fair. Some nice shots. Lewis chatting, and there we have it. There's Connor Sport. Story mode returning. Oh, that was a shot of the hood. Hang on a minute. Let's go back. There was a shot of the heads-up display, and it looked very different. Okay, so that is the brand new heads-up display for F1 25. Interesting. I can see what they're going for with the kind of shape to kind of mold around the, you know, the placement in the cockpit, like when you see the cutout in the car from T-Cam, that's kind of covering over snugly. I mean, I think that's more aesthetically pleasing than it ever was in F1 24. I think a lot of you will agree. Apart from that, I mean, the actual gameplay itself, familiar, I think you'll agree, but there seems to be some sort of almost like color grading thing going on where it looks slightly color graded differently. I mean, so far, all the gameplay shots have been very colorful as well compared to the last 2 games. Oh! Of course they crashed with the Red Bull. Of course.
Remember, we don't beat Red Bull by copying them.
Well, there we go. Breaking Point 3, and it's going to be we don't beat Red Bull by copying them, i.e., finally we're going to be getting a story mode where we can fight for the F1 World Championship.
Into the pits they come. And they come out the pit entry. Yes, guys.
He comes out the pit entry. That is reverse racing, basically confirmed. He's come out the pit entry. He's coming out of the Zandvoort pit entry, and he's driving the other way. Usually something you can only do with a no-rules lobby. Have they finally understood how many times people like to do that online and just with themselves? Are they making it a thing legit in the base game?
Is a game changer.
I mean, they say that's a game changer, so that I think they're really trying to heavily point towards the reverse driving. I mean, they're doing it right there. They're going backwards around the Zandvoort banking, and that's backwards. This is going into the end of Maggots and Beckett, and that is going backwards down Austria Sector 1, that is.
Let's go.
That's cool to see Lewis getting into it.
If you think you know how your story ends, think again.
Cold. Absolutely cold. Oh! That was the F1 movie car. That's got to mean some tie-in with the F1 movie then. For something in the game then. All right, so some interesting tidbits in that trailer. But you guys know how it is on this channel. And I feel like you guys appreciate this. We like to go deep into the press release and pick out and pick apart the press release for any proper details of this game. I want to say this off the bat. looking over this press release, I've highlighted some stuff, but there has been no mention, and maybe they wouldn't mention in a press release like this. You know, this is going everywhere. You know, your online sites, news outlets, IGN, etc. You know, global sites and everything. So maybe they wouldn't say it in a press release like this. But I feel like if I was at the senior level of EA and Codemasters here, I would be coming out straight away. Maybe it'll be on their website when I check that in a bit. But I would come out and say, we have heard the players, and we're going to be definitely fixing the handling from F1 24, and we're definitely going to be fixing the AI, because there's been no mention of that. And it's all well and good having this news about my team coming up and story mode. But if the AI are still as abysmal as they were on F1 24, none of that matters. So they really need to be coming out in one of the first deep dives that I haven't highlighted, but the deep dive, one of the first deep dives, simply needs to just be like Lee Mather sitting down and going, we're fixing the AI. We're fixing the handling. Sort of thing. Honestly, I think that's what they need to be doing in the first deep dive. And I hope someone from Codies is watching and is going to pass that on. Because take it from me, honestly, lads and ladettes, do that. You have to do that. I'm going to start with this first bit, as we mentioned at the very top of the video, that F1 25, the F1 game now, is finally ditching the old generation of consoles, which hopefully will mean they can fully utilize the power of the newer gen and PC, of course, to make the game run better, look better, hopefully, because they've also later mentioned the power of its Ego engine. So it's still on the same Ego engine. The next bit, as we already mentioned, is the story mode with Breaking Point. There's no other real details here in the press release. It's the same thing, just talking about we'll now be battling for championship. There are some screenshots they have released to go along with this press release, and a lot of them feature heavily, from the story mode, because I suppose that mode is probably fully finished at this point in terms of, they're still developing parts of the game, like the actual 2025 cars for the real teams, but stuff like the story mode, a lot of it will be done, because I suspect, like previous games with the story mode, it's going to be based off last year's championship, basically. We saw on the trailer, and you can see it now with this screenshot. It's going to be the return also inside of that story mode of the snazzier CGI cutscenes and animations to go along with it to flesh it out. I hope, as I've said previously, there are just way more of them to give us even more story to go around all the driving parts. This third shot, though, from the story mode in F1 25 is interesting, because this gives us a little look, probably, at the first look at the new FOM car. So the same chassis that we'll be using in My Team Career mode. You can see the front wing is slightly altered. We've got the nose cone now on the second plane of the front wing. The front wing flaps themselves now have the inner little segmented bit compared to just one continuous flow. The nose itself slightly changed, maybe more towards what the kind of Alpine is like in this year's championship, but no real dramatic changes to the FOM car like we've seen maybe in previous years when we've changed regulations, or there's been a really big update of the generic philosophy of all the F1 teams on the grid. I'm just going to skip ahead in this press release just to highlight the LIDAR technology bit. So they say, on track, F1 25 continues to innovate through the power of its Ego engine, enabling increased circuit authenticity made possible through LIDAR technology. Several tracks and their surroundings are transformed with a more realistic look and feel. This is a screenshot we've got showing that LIDAR off working at the Albert Park Melbourne Australian Grand Prix circuit. So the hope is that they say several tracks, so we don't know how many specifically, but hopefully a good chunk are going to get a nice realistic update using LiDAR technology, which is literally laser scanning everything so that you actually get an accurate, mapping of the circuit. So the tracks that those will affect will be the most realistic scan and version that we're going to be getting so far in the official Formula 1 game. So that is a good step in the right direction. The hope is eventually we're getting to the point where every single track can use the LiDAR technology to get the most accurate depiction of every single circuit. Again, as I said before, noting that they mentioned the power of the Ego engine, so I think they're trying to big up, losing old gen, and that's going to be sufficient enough to, power the next game. But I still think myself and a lot of you guys are thinking it's still probably not enough. Like, the game doesn't look incredibly different enough to kind of, you know, be like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, the power of the Ego engine, it's definitely, you know, a massive step forward. Going back to the press release then, the next part I've highlighted is to do with the F1 film tie-in. So we saw in the reveal trailer there at the end, that was the car from the F1 movie in F1 25. So if you pre-order the Iconic Edition, there's going to be some post-launch gameplay chapters inspired by the film, featuring the actual car from the film. So post-launch, I suspect whenever the F1 movie is coming out later in the summer, around that time, we'll be seeing that DLC addition, the post-launch update with some gameplay chapters. I suspect probably similar like we see in Breaking Point or we've seen with scenario modes, maybe just like 1 or 2 cutscenes either side of the actual gameplay bit, and it might be a scenario mode where you know, well, they showed it seemed like the Italian Grand Prix, wasn't it? I think it was at Monza from the F1 movie. So there's going to be some sort of additional content, which is exciting, to be fair. Now, here we go to the game mode that, of course, concerns me and a lot of you guys the most as my viewers, is My Team Career Mode. As we suspected for the entire year, it's going to be receiving its first significant overhaul since F1 2020. We have a screenshot from what I assume is going to be one of the new vistas of our HQ facility. So this will be, hopefully this and a lot of other vistas and areas will be the new area of My Team Career Mode. And I really hope we get all new UI and everything, and also actual new features and ways to play around with what they're calling take on new responsibilities. They're really going top level. They're not giving anything away at this stage about what those responsibilities will be, but it says new responsibilities. So I hope that's going to be something different to what we've already experienced with My Team. So we've already had, you know, the HQ facilities, the levels, etc., you know, buying certain levels and then upgrading our car, but we want to see new stuff on top of that. So it's still My Team as we know it, players calling the shots as the owner of their F1 team, but then get behind the wheel of either of the team's drivers. So is that drive it? You can drive as the teammate you've selected. Like you can choose, oh, I'm going to drive as me today, my player, my avatar, or I'm going to drive as my teammate, because that's quite an interesting dynamic, because there are times in My Team in the past on F1 23, 22, etc. before where you think actually it could be cool to drive as your teammate because, you know, let's say your driver, your avatar is high enough rated that you know it's going to do well, and you kind of want your teammate to do better for the sake of the constructors, or maybe your teammate's in a championship fight and you want to help him out or just drive him as him. I don't know if that's actually what it means. I mean, it says either of the team's drivers, so that's a bit of an odd one, very left field. I don't know who was kind of asking for a feature like that, but I'll be curious to see how that's implemented and what sort of, you know, why they want to allow us to drive as either driver. One extra thing that I will point out that isn't in the press release, but is here on the Steam page, which is always quite useful for, you know, slipping through, you know, some things that maybe weren't meant to be revealed, is on the Steam page here on the pre-purchase menu. In the comparison, the standard and iconic edition, it says here at the bottom, F3 driver icons. It says it here in writing, F3 TM driver icons, and again here, so it's not a mistake. So this is, we've had no news on Formula 3 being in the game as a fully fleshed championship like F2 is, and I doubt it's going to be it. But what I do think this means is in My Team Career Mode, I hope this means they're going to add a bumper of a couple of at least Formula 3 drivers, probably the more well-known ones, or, you know, their driver icons, so probably like the hot shots of Formula 3, you know, the ones that, you know, the F1 World IRL are touting to make it to F2 and then make it to F1 in, you know, down in the future when it's their generation's turn to get to Formula 1. I suspect that's what that means, is that we're going to get F3 drivers, a couple of them, to pick from, to use in My Team Career Mode. So on top of the very vague description that we get in the press release, that's at least something. That's at least a juicy detail to, you know, That's at least a juicy detail, and a positive note is we are going to get some sort of F3 action in my team when it comes to the drivers available to pick. It's not a confirmation of a full F3 championship. I doubt it is, because I feel like they would have made a fuss about that otherwise, but that's at least more detail than we got in the press release. Something else also the Steam page tells us is we've got a new owner perk system allowing you to specialize in preferred areas of team management. So that's a bit more detail on the new responsibilities. There's going to be a new area of owner perks, but that may just be a repackaged, you know, way of speeding up upgrades. So that's really actually, when you boil it down, not actually something new, because there's just a repackaged way of doing something we did before. And again, it says get behind the wheel of either of your two F1 drivers on race weekends. So this hasn't actually mentioned you being a player, a driver owner. It just says owner. So have they changed what my team is going to be? And it's you're an owner and you can drive as two real drivers. I don't know how to feel about that. I hope there's still an ability to create your own driver and put him in there, because I think that was half the fun of being an owner driver, is having your own player in the game as well. We'll hear more details as per usual in the deep dives, but that's all we're getting right now. It's the kind of usual first reveal that we've seen now for the last 2-3 years of the F1 games, where there's not a lot of meat to the first reveal. Like, I think the last game where we actually got some proper juicy details was F1 2021, when they first announced the story mode, like the first story mode. Since then, they just love to do this thing where it's just like a tiny shred of non-detailed info. And this year, it's not enough. It's not enough for me to be like, oh, like, you know, I'm waiting for actual gameplay bits, screenshots, and reassurance that things are going to be better. There's no mention of transfers, how those are going to work. That's going to be one of my first questions when it comes to my team, is how are the transfers? Forget about any of these features. How are the transfers? Are the driver transfers actually interesting? That's going to be my first question, really. Well, one of my first questions, along with the handling and the AI raceability. I've highlighted this one thing. So twice in this press release, Lee Mather mentioning collaborative, new opportunities for players to connect and collaborate. And he goes again, you know, F1 celebrating its 75th anniversary, recreating every breathtaking moment through various single player and new collaborative options. So again, they're being very coy, but what I feel like they're emphasizing that for some reason, collaborative options, whether that means a redo on co-op. Is that going to be a redo on co-op career? Because collaborative, is that going to be, so they're not mentioning it, but maybe co-op is going to get a bit of a revamp as well? Or maybe there's going to be, dare I say, new multiplayer options, like are we going to get a multiplayer championship or something? I don't know, but they've said that twice for some reason, so I felt like they need to highlight that. And then at the end, just the usual spiel about, obviously, we'll get a multitude of perks for, you know, pre-ordering the Iconic Edition. There'll be some content coming to F1 24 with the 2025 season liveries. And finally, without any avoidance of doubt, here is the official party line here. Not available on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. So if you're thinking I've got that wrong, no, I've not. It's there in writing from EA themselves. They have not mentioned at all in this press release about reverse driving, but it's pretty clear from the trailer, from what you can hear from the commentary line in the trailer, they're hinting at, and the gameplay bits, that there is going to be some sort of reverse driving available. It probably is going to be something like available in like Grand Prix mode and multiplayer mode, just like if you remember when they used to have short layouts of circuits. Who remembers those short layout circuits? Oh, that was it. That was a time. It's probably going to be implemented like that, where it's going to be in Grand Prix mode and multiplayer that you can do a backwards racing. But unlike when, you know, you do it in an open lobby with a content creator, it seems like from the trailer it will be properly implemented, where you could even do a pit stop and enter the pits from the exit and exit out the entry, if that makes sense. You're doing the whole pit lane backwards as well. So there'll actually hopefully be, you know, long races, you can do like a 50% race backwards, the hope would be, from what you can glance from the trailer. But that then is my full coverage of this F1 25 reveal. Guys, if you have enjoyed the video and found it informative, then be sure to hit the like button. Crucially, let me know what you're thinking, because there's some things that are interesting there, but again, like I said, I am waiting. I am skeptical, and I am waiting for the important stuff. The actual important stuff, like, is the handling actually more enjoyable? Is the AI actually raceable again and fun to race? What are the transfers like in My Team Career Mode? Before we even get to what are the actual new responsibilities and features of My Team, and what does that mean with driving both drivers, etc. And we're not seeing that yet. As I said earlier in the video, I hope one of the deep dives is just going to give us some clarity on that, because I think they need to. But let me know what you guys make of it. Be sure to hit the like button if you did find this video informative and you enjoyed it. If you're new around here, then do get subscribed for weekly Formula 1 content and all the latest F1 game news as soon as it comes. Till the next one, guys. Goodbye.